Good evening, everyone. My name is Mika Fay, and I'm the Manager of Education and Interpretation here at the Corning Museum of Glass. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this Connected by Glass event, Table Talk, a global gathering with our junior curators. First, I'm going to read our land acknowledgement. The Corning Museum of Glass is located upon the unceded seized territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, of which the Onondaga, the Seneca Nation, and the Gayakono, the Cayuga Nation, are a part. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy precedes the establishment of the museum, New York State, and the United States of America. The museum acknowledges the oppressive history inflicted upon and the continued dispossession of the Haudenosaunee people. We honor their ongoing connection to these lands and waters. We ask all present to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that connect us all. So tonight, I'm going to briefly introduce the Junior Curator program and its history. And then you're going to hear from our curator of early modern glass, Julie Belmar, who will take a deeper dive into the process the Junior Curators took and the objects in the exhibition. I'll come back a bit to wrap up some of that with the last couple of weeks, and then the Junior Curators will discuss their experience in the program and how they created Table Talk, a global gathering. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end, and those of us here in person will then head upstairs to view the exhibition. For those of you online, please use the Q&A feature in the chat to ask questions. What is the Junior Curator program? So this is one of the longest running museum teen programs in the country. It was established here in the 1957-58 school year, which means the program is really getting close to its 70th birthday. We estimate the program has served nearly 1,600 area students in its run, some of whom go on to work in museums and cite the program as an influence. My colleague and I just had lunch with a former junior curator who's studying geology and minoring in museums in graduate school and wants to work in a science museum and credits this program for it. And they're also studying volcanoes in geology, and they kind of credit the Glass Museum for their interest in the volcanoes. So it's pretty cool. Junior curators are also everywhere with that many of them. Our events production and programs manager, Scott, was a junior curator. And I've run into former junior curators in the most random places, like on a cruise. So we're always looking to connect with former junior curators, so if you are one or know one, please reach out. The program has looked different throughout its history. It's always been run by the education department, and it's been free for participants. It was called the Junior Curator Association in its earliest years. And you can see some of these pictures. I think they're fabulous. The one on the left is the Junior Curator newsletter from 1959. And there is a photo on the right, I think that's from the 70s. The program has included a variety of ages. It's been conducted over various lengths of time, had different kinds of projects. And though the projects and themes have changed, the production of an exhibition and emphasis on careers in the arts, especially in museums, have recurred throughout its history. Come on. Okay. Maybe. Taylor, can we advance one? Thank you. The program serves students in grades 8 through 12 now who meet weekly after school to design an exhibition. For a while, the junior curators used the student and instructor artworks showcased at the studio to create their exhibition. So you can see one example there on the screen. 2017 marked a really big shift. Half of the junior curators that year worked on the studio exhibition, while half wrote a proposal for the 2018 exhibition, a time capsule marking the 60th anniversary of the program, and they presented their proposal to our museum director for approval. She said yes, and in 2018, they worked with one of our glass artists to realize that vision. Their glass time capsule will be opened on the 100th anniversary of the program in 2058. Since then, The Junior Curators have worked with museum objects to create their exhibition that goes on view in the museum's galleries. From focusing on new acquisitions and rarely viewed artworks, to examining glass and the roles of women in advertising, to commemorating the 1972 Chemung River flood, their voices were not stopped by a pandemic, but only got stronger. Our goals include giving participants an authentic experience where they have agency, make most of the decisions, and to promote their voices and points of view in the museum and to our visitors and communities. It's a hybrid program, so we meet in person here at the museum, and just like tonight's event, we can incorporate participants virtually. This came about thanks to the pandemic, and we have 3 students this year who participated primarily virtually in the program. Students work with me, Troy Smythe, our Manager of Interpretation Strategy and Education Projects, a curatorial liaison, who this year is Julie Belmar, our Curator of Early Modern Glass, and a Rake-Hell Library liaison, who is Allie Shanna-Felter, our reference librarian. And Allie could not join us in person, but I believe she is watching us online, so hi, Allie. This year's 14 participants span grades 8 through 12 and include 5 graduating seniors. 7 participants were in the program last year, and a couple of them have been with us for more than 2 years. 3 joined us from New York City and North Carolina virtually for most of the year, but 2 of them have joined us tonight in person, traveling from New York and North Carolina to be with us. So the group started meeting in January, and with snow days and breaks, we met a total of 17 times for an hour and 45 minutes each time. So in less than 30 hours with the Junior Curators, they create their exhibition with museum support. They get background, do research, choose objects, create an interpretive goal, a title, labels, work with graphics on design, and much more. There is a lot of interdepartmental cooperation and collaboration that goes into this program and the resulting exhibition, and we thank everyone involved for their time and support. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who is going to take you behind the exhibition.
All right, thank you, Mika. So, Again, I'm Julie Belmar, the Curator of Early Modern Glass and this year's Curatorial Liaison for the Junior Curator program. Now that you've heard about this program and this year's participants from Mika, I'd like to take you behind the exhibition through a 5-month journey from first meeting to final display. So, you've seen this slide. This is what the process looks like. I'll go through some of these steps in more details, but we started by introducing the potential exhibition objects, and every week was a mix of honing down the theme or writing the labels and meeting with museum staff to learn more about what it means to work in a museum and what everybody's role is. So this year, in what is somewhat a return to a previous model, the museum curators each submitted 5 objects from their collection area for the Junior Curators consideration. The criteria were that the objects be off view, in good condition, that they physically fit in the display space, and that they be significant or unusual or spark some sort of conversation. So, we have works ranging from antiquity to present times, and from Corning to China. What would you have picked? Why? How do the objects tell a bigger story? These were the questions that the Junior Curators were faced with. But we didn't make any decisions immediately. First, they played around with the groupings based on what they could see. And then, the following week, our museum curators came in to tell them more about the objects. With all the options still open, we visited the Rake-Hell Research Library, graciously hosted by Allie Shanna-Felter, who found a broad range of archival materials that were related to the objects. Here you can see a table placement at the top for dinner for 2, an illustration of someone cheating at a card game to its top right, a menu, and advertisements for domestic lighting. So all of these provided context for the objects and ultimately informed the design aesthetic for the exhibition. Here, the junior curators toured the contemporary art and design galleries with Reese Peacock, our fellow for contemporary, post-war and contemporary class. Reese discussed interpretation strategies for abstract works of art and how to choose works so that they create visual and thematic connections across the display space. We also did a gallery walkthrough with Vince Mazzoni, our graphic designer, to explore some of the different ways in which information is communicated to visitors in different parts of the museum. We discussed how some displays are more effective than others in conveying crucial information about the objects, and they really make the visit easier for the visitor, but other displays make it slightly harder, and why, and how can we make a display really clear and informative in our own exhibition. We also did a behind-the-scenes tour with Warren Bunn, our senior manager of collections, to see the design and construction process behind our current special exhibition, Brilliant Color. After it opened, the junior curators had the opportunity to go back and hear directly from the curator, Amy McHugh, about the stories that she wanted to tell with the exhibition and how she chose the objects and also sectioned out the space in the exhibition to best do this. So Warren also took the students on a special cargo elevator, which is always a treat. And here you can see our online attendees also on the elevator. And Astrid Van Giffen, one of our conservators, explained how she approaches the objects so that they can be safely displayed for people to enjoy while being preserved for future generations, which is always a tightrope that we walk on. Like how to provide access, but also how to preserve. And I must commend how much effort was made to take our virtual participants on all of these tours. So special thanks to Mika for this. So here you can see Mika holding her laptop and her phone to make sure that they would get the most out of the experience. I know it's not always perfect, but we do our best. Our virtual participants were also engaging through Teams, either through video or the chat function, which you can see here on the right. So after a lot of thinking about the objects and grouping them in different arrangements, this is how the students ultimately decided on a theme. We went through 2 or 3 rounds of voting with Post-its. Everyone used green for first choice, yellow for second choice, and red for third. And we ranked them according to, 3 points for green and going down like that. And, the theme that scored the most points won. So, and we tallied up the virtual voting as well. And so this was the final round after we consolidated all of the thematic ideas into 3. And this theme of special occasions, which is at the center here, at this point included 3 sub-themes of dining, gaming or entertainment, and also getting ready. So this is one example of how the students played around with the objects. They each had a set of printouts, which they could arrange into different groupings. So this was taken after voting on the theme and before arriving at the final object list. So maybe some of the junior curators can talk about this process of selecting the object and also selecting the theme. There were some objects here that didn't make it into the exhibition for different reasons. So again, this is the original object selection available, and these are the final 8 objects that made it into the case. So next, I want to give you some very quick information about these objects, and then I will let the junior curators tell you more about how they connect to the broader themes and ideas that they were thinking about this year. So, in this first grouping, which is more related to dining, you have 3 objects, and on the left is a fork and knife from around 1750. You might notice that the handles are made of glass, and they're not just any glass. It's a glass called aventurine. It was invented in Italy, in Venice, in the early 1600s, and it contains copper crystals, and so it has this sparkly gold effect. And if you're in person, if you're looking at the objects in the case, you can really see that glittery effect. So this was a glass that could not really, the secret was not out of Venice yet, and so it was imported or exported all over Europe here to England, where a knife maker used that glass and mounted it and used a steel made in England to mount a set of fork and knife. So really special object for the table. In the middle, you have a bowl that is used for washing your fingers, and this is made in Turkey, and it was part of a resurgence of local sort of domestic manufacture of glass in Turkey around the beginning of the 20th century. And this has the monogram of the Sultan at the time. And on the right, you have a wine jug in the so-called Russian patterns, which was made here in Corning. What's interesting about this jug is that it takes the shape of leather pouches from nomadic peoples of Eurasia. So it has a very sort of soft inspired shape from a leather sort of water holding vessel, but it's carved in this, scintillating pattern of cut glass. So quite a contrast. In the middle of the case is this beautiful flower holder that was made in England, again, around the beginning of the 20th century. This is part of sort of an Art Nouveau movement in England, and this is a centerpiece that could also hold flowers, or in some other iterations, nuts and small dishes for the table. So, and it came in all kinds of shapes and patterns, as you can see in the advertisement on the left. So, the hostess could choose how to arrange these pieces on the table to create an interesting centerpiece. And the arrangement could vary from dinner party to dinner party. So this is a fantastic piece. And finally, the grouping that relates more to entertainment or gaming or post-dinner games. On the left, we have a snuff bottle from China. Snuff is a powdered tobacco mixed with fragrant materials like spices or other forms of perfume. And the bottles that contain it are really a widespread form of glass production in China around the 18th and 19th century. There's so many of them, and they're made in small workshops for individuals. And they often are a little bit quirky or colorful, or have some sort of impact. This one is glass that's imitating jade. So oftentimes, when it could be displayed or showed off when you're with friends at a gathering to show your individuality or your taste and so on. In the middle, we have a pair of knuckle bones, which were the ancestors of dice. So these are cast glass replicas of, I believe, sheep's knuckle bones. And they would be, not necessarily the glass replicas, but the sheep's bones, knuckle bones, would be thrown just like dice, and depending on which side they landed on, you could read it as the numbers on a dice, and so they would be used in games of chance. And finally, on the right, you have a quite large pass glass, which is a type of glass that was used largely for drinking games. The idea is that in a group, one person would drink from it until, and when you put the glass back on the table, the beer, which it would be beer, would arrive right at that line. You see how there are about 3 lines that go around the glass, and if you missed the line, you had to drink again until you reached the next line, and so on and so forth. But a lot of these glasses were commissioned by professional organizations or guilds of tradesmen. In this case, I don't know if you've guessed, but it's a guild of shoemakers or boot makers. You can see the big boot on the glass there. So this would be sort of a ritual that would cement the community. All right. So after many writing sessions in which we used a process that Troy really put together and led, called drafting an interpretive goal. So the interpretive goal is a way that we ask certain questions about what we want the exhibition to do, and how we want to present the objects, what people who see the exhibition, like how they should be feeling afterwards, what they should get away from it. And so after all of that is put together, it acts as a guide, not only for label writing, but also for object selection and for design and graphics. So we finally got to some design choices. Vince came back to us with font ideas and color palettes, which were based on the Raycal library materials that the students had previously looked at. So the students had the idea of using a menu or a dinner invitation as the inspiration for the design of the case. They ended up choosing a font and a color scheme that fitted the title, which they also settled on around that time, so table talk. And from there, the choices became easier. Another fun part of the process is not only seeing the objects in person, but arranging them in the case so that the themes make sense and that the case is visually pleasing. This takes place in our prep room with the help of Robin Arenado, our manager of collections and exhibition preparators, who handles the objects. The junior curators have free rein to ask Robin to move this object left or right, or to select a riser or a little block to elevate it a little bit more. These are all very subtle changes, but they make a huge difference in attracting attention to each object and also to the case as a whole. And after this was done, we planned the celebration tonight. But I will now hand it back to Mika.
Thank you, Julie. So you can see how much work went into this in just an hour and 45 minutes every week. As Julie said, during this time, they were also creating their interpretive goal, coming up with a title, doing lots of brainstorming, doing lots of writing of the labels and the introductory text, planning their celebration, which preceded this event, and planning this event tonight. And here we are. So now, I know we all want to hear from the junior curators themselves about their experience. This is about them and their work and not about us. So I'm going to turn it over to Troy Smythe for the panel Q&A with them. Junior curators, please join us up here in the seats. And once you're seated, if you'll take a mic and start passing it down and introduce yourselves with your name and your grade to everyone.
I'm James. I was in 8th grade.
I'm Lila Yanovici. I was a senior.
I'm Rukma Chaudhary, and I'm a senior too.
I'm Lauren Roche, and I'm a senior.
I'm Ryder Sparling, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Shaina Harrison, and I'm in 9th grade.
I'm Diti Niranjan, and I'm a senior.
I'm Prachita Behera, and I'm a junior.
I'm Ananya Chauhan, I'm in 8th grade.
I'm Jessica Caddies, I'm a senior.
I'm Rowan Baugh, and I'm in 11th grade.
I'm Marie Bierweiler, and I'm a junior.
I am Damien Lyric, and I am now in 10th grade.
And we have one more who's online. Nachal, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Sean, I'm in 8th grade.
Great, thank you very much. These are your 2025 Junior Curators. We're super proud of them. Part of the value of this program, in addition to the way it introduces young people to the world of work in a particular place, in museums, which are surprisingly diverse in the number of different jobs that happen here. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Oops. Other way? Oh, sorry, my bad. I've got it upside down. There So this group ends up trying out all kinds of jobs as part of this program, which is one of the things we really love about it. And Mika was right when she says we try to make this as authentic an experience as possible. Because pretty soon they're going to end up in the world of work, and as we know, it's best to go into that world prepared. And so we try to give them as many experiences as we can with that. But you know, as you see, we've got a group here that ranges everywhere from 8th grade up into seniors in high school. And many of the people who are new, this is a very new experience for. Some of the ones that are experienced have a kind of an arc of work that they experience over time. So I kind of wanted to start by really kind of asking the junior curators about that, the difference between the two experiences, being new versus being more experienced. So I'm going to start with the ones for whom this was a first year experience. Ananya, actually raise your hand if this was your first year to be a part of. Raise it high. There you go. Yeah, so it's a good number of people. Ananya, would you mind answering the question of what it was like to be a first year? Somebody pass the mic to Ananya, please.
So it was a really fun first year experience for me as a junior curator. I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot of new things this year. And I learned how to put together an exhibit. I didn't realize it was a lot of work until this year. So yeah, it was just a really fun experience for me.
Great. Prachita, you were new this year as well, I believe. You mind kind of answering this question?
It was also a really fun experience for me. I didn't realize how much work went into each and every gallery and exhibition that the museum planned, and that made me like have a lot more respect and dedication to my work in this exhibition as well.
Awesome, thank you. So let's talk here from some of the people who've been here before. So raise your hand if you were a returning junior curator. Great, so we're almost like half and half. So Ryder, why don't you tell us about kind of what happens when you go from being a first year to a more experienced junior curator? How are the two experiences different for you?
Well, I feel like, first of all, coming in the second year, you have a lot more confidence because you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. But I feel like last year, because it was historical, it was specifically 1960s Czechoslovakia, versus this year where we were kind of just like, we had to craft our own story out of objects that were given to us rather than we were given a story and had to pick objects that fulfilled that story. It was a lot more, I feel like, freeing for us as a group. Like, I feel like we had a lot more like interpretation that we could do rather than like having to fulfill like facts or like factual information about history.
Yeah, I mean, these exhibitions tell stories, and last year we sort of had a little bit of that story handed to us. But oftentimes a curator has a selection of objects. I mean, if you think about all the different ages and kind of periods of history that our collection represents, sometimes you have to tell stories with something that's from the ancient world next to something that might be contemporary. So that's a pretty challenging thing for any curator to do. So it was really cool to see you all take that on. Marie, you're returning, right? And I remember you from last year, Marie. You were very quiet last year. Do you feel any different about, you know, how your experience was last year versus this year?
Yeah, I agree with Ryder. You definitely have like a lot more confidence than you did the year before. And the process of deciding what your exhibit was going to be about was definitely, I think, the most different part. We decided last year, like the first or second meeting, because we were just given like 3 different subjects to choose from. But this year we had to pick from a bunch of different objects and come up with our own groupings for all of them. And we also met with each curator that picked out the objects for us. So I feel like in that aspect it was very different.
Yeah, it's hard to get all the curators in one room, actually. I try it frequently. So I'm always grateful when they can all be here together. So that's a rare gift. Let's shift our focus a little bit to our online experiences. Mika said that's been a new feature of the exhibition since the pandemic. And Nachal, we know you're online because we can see you online. Raise your hand if you're on the dais and you were online. So Jess and Deepti. So tell us a little bit about the pros and cons of the online experience. Let's start with Nishal.
So, the cons are you don't really get to collaborate with your peers, and you also don't really like get the authentic feeling of exploring the entire museum.
Yeah.
But the pros are just being able to be here and understand what's going on and like chime in and help like build the exhibit.
Right. And honestly, the world of work is hybrid. And so it's good that you have this experience. I wish I could have had it before 2020, to be honest. So, Jess, how about you?
Hi, is it working? Okay. I feel like a big pro of this program is I don't think there's any program like it. I live in Queens, and there's a bunch of museums near me, but there's not a lot of museums that have hybrid programs, so this was very inclusive, and I liked it a lot. And I feel like with curating, it's a very collaborative job. So to be like 5 hours away, I think I have such a great opportunity here. So I'm really grateful.
And we're so grateful that our online people joined us. And also that, you know, at least all of the families that were involved online are represented here, even if Michelle's not here, Deepti is. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come and see us. And hope you enjoy your time while you're here. So, oops, let's see here. Back up one. All right, so let's shift into the kind of mechanics of getting an exhibition put together. Julie went into a little bit of the process, but I'd like to hear about it from your perspective. Lauren, why don't you tell us about the process you went through to choose the topic?
So this year was a little bit different than previous years, as people kind of mentioned already. In previous years, we were given some topics to select from already, and they already had the objects grouped into them. And then we would just narrow down our objects from there. This year was a little bit different. We started with just a bunch of objects, and we had to group them ourselves. So we had to make connections between the pieces and really think about how they were alike and not alike. And this was a little bit difficult because some of the pieces fit in multiple categories, and some of them didn't really seem to fit with the others as well. But it definitely gave us more of an insight as to what curators experience when they're creating an exhibit, because you really have to work to make those connections, and sometimes it's not as easy, and you really just have to make connections between your objects to make the exhibit really good.
Great. Rowan, I'd love to hear your perspective on this question as well. Tell us about as a person who was new to the program this year, about your perspective on the process.
So it was my first year as a junior curator, so I'm not really sure exactly how it went last year, but honestly, just backpacking off of Lauren, we got a whole bunch of objects, and one thing that I found really helpful that helped us choose a topic was being able to go to the library and research about all the objects, learn the history behind them, and that really helped narrow down what objects we wanted, because it was able to show a connection between each of the objects and create a cohesive exhibit. So.
Yeah, I mean, we started you out by just looking at the object. So just visually what was interesting to you as a group. And that's a good place to start, because museums obviously are about looking at things that people have made or that show up in nature or history. But doesn't stop there, right? You have to kind of figure out, is there a story, is there enough of a story there? I think in our case, we kind of started with sort of two topics that were sort of related to each other, and it got kind of quite a few votes. One was special occasions, and I think the other one was dining. And we ended up combining those with consensus. And actually, you've kind of touched on this already, Rowan, but I'd love to hear from Pachita too. How did your work with the Raycow, and we also studied other galleries as well, so you kind of saw some slides of Vince walking us through Glass Bridge, working our way through the new exhibition that was opening up, Brilliant Color. Pachita, tell us about kind of your experience and how that helped you to see other things and go to the Raycow.
With the Raycow library, I think we got a lot of like insight and history on each of the pieces, which like later helped us organize them into our like distinct topics in the exhibition itself. And like by learning them, I think it was like a new like educational experience, and I really liked knowing all of that. And then by studying galleries, we got experience and insight on like our exhibition and how we should plan it to properly convey our emotions and our messages.
Yeah, we had the option of choosing some of the things that we found in the Reikau to include as well. We didn't end up including a ton of things, but the ones we did, I think, do a good job of further telling the story. So let's talk a little bit about the subject we settled on. Yeah, what about the subject of table talk seemed important to highlight, especially at this time in history? Rukma, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think I really liked the idea of table talk because I think with all the objects we had, they were kind of from all different parts of time. But so I think focusing on the dining table as a place of like togetherness and comfort for a lot of people was nice because that like has a timeless piece throughout history. I think it's like important and relevant right now because like there's a lot of craziness with like just all the time, but like a lot of craziness right now. So like even if you're stressed with work or whatever or anything, you can like always go back to a table, some sort of table, like a lot of people can, and it's always a nice place to eat together. Like we did earlier in the celebration, we had that table talk time, and I think gaming and eating is very timeless, and I think it was really nice to display a small part of life, but like blow it up into a whole exhibit.
Kind of a part of life we don't even talk about very much. You know, it's just kind of, it's something, eating is something we do every day, hopefully. And then gaming, it may not be kind of one of the life's primary needs, but we talked a lot about how, you know, gaming is actually a part of everyday culture for a lot of the young people in our world today. And that is a very social connection. And so that need for social connection ends up being kind of important. One of the parts of the interpretive goal was that as the Junior Curators had visitors sort of reflecting on the table and thinking about the table's roles in all of our lives, is that hopefully it might inspire us to kind of go back to wherever it is we're from and think about that in intentional ways going forward as a way of kind of enriching the lives that we're living, which I loved to hear them say that. All right, so let's talk about some of the uglier parts of the process. Tell me about the process of narrowing down the object from 21 pieces to 8 pieces, and which were the hardest to say goodbye to? Lilo, let's start with you.
Yeah, so originally our exhibition, we wanted to organize it into like 3 sequential categories. So we had before, during, and after a special occasion or a dinner time event or some sort of entertainment gathering. And so that section of before basically wanted to feature objects that related to getting ready for some sort of party. So we had these really colorful earrings from England that were in the 18th century, I believe. And that was going to be in that section with the snuff bottle that did make it to the final cut. But we found that the before a party kind of competed with our main story, which was the togetherness of the table that Rukma touched on. So we decided to scrap the earrings. Well, not the actual earrings. They are still, they exist, just their presence in our
They're still safely in the
exhibition.
collection, yes.
But we got rid of them from our exhibition to focus more so on the tableside activities themselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, Lauren, I remember, you know, we sort of had the 3 sections, the getting ready, dining, and then gaming as kind of part of it. You sort of piped up and said, I don't know about this getting ready part. And I don't know, we heard you, but you just sort of oh, we've made our decision. You know, tell us a little bit about how you ended up convincing us that this was a change we needed to make. Because we did indeed make it.
Yeah, I know that me, Leela, and Rukma were talking about this a little bit outside of our meetings. And we, like Leela said, we felt like the earrings, like, it was just a little bit too much, and we didn't want to, like, complicate our story too much. We just wanted to keep it very straight to the point and all about being connected. So the earrings were grouped with the snuff bottle originally in the beginning as the getting ready portion. And we decided we still wanted to hang on to the snuff bottle, so we decided to move it to the entertainment section at the end. And then we did have to scrap the earrings to simplify our story a little bit.
Does anybody want to tell why the snuff bottle shows up in this exhibition at all? Can you remember why that ends up in the, would have ended up in the getting ready, but also in the gaming section? That's a surprise question you weren't expecting, I know.
Yeah, I can take that one. Well, we were talking about the snuff bottle. Well, when we went through the exhibits, Julie actually made a new part of the, like, 13th century ones. It was like a whole wall of just snuff bottles, and we thought that was really cool. So then we related that back to how we originally had that in our options. And when we were out there, Julie was talking about how people used to, like, there's so many different colored ones. Like, if you're still here, you might want to check that out. It's really cool. They, like Julie said, like, people used to, like, bring these, and, like, yeah, they used it for entertainment, but they also used it, like, as a statement piece, like, we kind of compared it to phone cases nowadays. Like, it's just a little trinket that, like, kind of people used to equate with their own personalities in a way. So we thought that would be a part of getting ready, because, like, it's being, like, unapologetically yourself at, like, a special occasion. But we thought it would be, like, good in the entertainment part, because, like, even if you're around the table, like, it might be in your pocket, or, like, you might just, like, have it around. So we thought it'd be cool to include still, just to bring a different part of, like, table space.
Fortunately, objects can do more than one thing a lot of times. So let's move into kind of the installation of the case. This is always an exciting time for all of us, including the people, those of us who administer the program, because until this point, none of us have actually seen the objects in person. We've all been working with either two-dimensional reproductions or slides, and this is the first time you actually get to see the size of things and start to have to figure out, okay, well, how do we tell this story, and how do these objects speak to each other? So, James, you were really engaged in this part of the process. I'm curious, like, how did you decide where you thought objects should go in the case?
Like, it was kind of like a combination of giving each object enough room and organizing them into their respective categories. Yeah, that room thing. People sometimes laugh when you say that the decision involved moving it a quarter inch this way or that way, but honestly, when you're dealing with the smallest space, it makes a difference. Jess, tell us, or Shaina, do you want to talk about your perspective on this question? My passer a mic.
Okay, so we put the wine jug and the pass glass on the outside because they're the two biggest pieces. And then we put the two knuckle bones and the knife and fork in the front so they wouldn't get hidden in the back. And then we put the snuff bottle and the finger bowl in the back on blocks so you could see them. And then the flower holder was put in the middle because it's a centerpiece for a dining table, so it makes sense if it was put in the middle.
Great. I'm just curious, were there any surprises for any of you? This is not on a question we had planned on either, but when you finally see these things in person, were there anything that were like, you kind of surprised you about seeing the things? Jess?
I remember seeing it online. When I saw the knuckle bones online, I thought they were like the size of my fist. So the first time I saw it in person, I was so surprised it was like the size of my fingernail.
Yeah.
So yeah, seeing it all in person is very different than seeing it on a 2D screen.
I also was surprised by how small the knuckles. They were literally the size of knuckles. So Ryder, tell us a little bit about, and we kind of think about who we want to pose these questions to as we get to know
the students a little bit. And Ryder and Jess are both artists, as well as junior curators. And so graphics and fonts and color design and all this figures really heavily in designing an exhibition. So I'd love to hear from our two artists, kind of their perspective on what role graphics play in telling our story.
I feel like this is another really good example of how the library influenced our design perspective, because there was all these really cool menus and brochures and stuff that were vintage, and we kind of took some of those ornamental elements and put them into the banner that's up there with this beautiful frame around the outside, and the map, which the map actually I think also provides a bit of geographical context to where the objects are, and is more accessible to people that even if you don't read the label, you can still figure out where the objects are just by looking at the map and seeing the line drawings. And the line drawings, of course, which I think also add instead of the number systems that we use elsewhere in the museum, it's a visual representation of it, so you don't have to think about where's number 5 in the case. You can just look and see, oh, it's like a vase or something. So
yeah, this is an ongoing struggle at this museum. We have oftentimes cases that have, I don't know, what's the 50 pieces in one case at times, and so how do you orient somebody's eye to know which label goes with which piece? And normally, well, oftentimes we use a little acrylic number and then number the label that goes with it. The graphic designer we worked with, Vince Mazzoni, created these great little drawings so that you don't have to make that mental jump. You actually can see the miniature version of it and know exactly which label it goes with. So that, I always credit this program for sometimes doing things first in the museum that we've never done before, and that this is an example of that. So Jess, tell me about your perspective on this.
I think Ryder brought this up, but I think one of the main goals of the exhibit is to show the cross-culturalness of dining and how glass kind of brings us together. And I think the map illustration does a really good job of showing the different cultures and where we sourced all the different glass pieces. I also think that graphics play a big role on guiding viewers in seeing how they understand the exhibit, because I'm all for I don't know, seeing art and having your own decision on what it means, but I think it's the graphics show a good mind map of what to expect.
Yeah, they can sometimes communicate look and feel and a mood in a way that just the objects by themselves might not be able to. So let's think a little bit about the future. So you've all been new at some point in this program. What would you tell someone who is thinking about becoming a junior curator next year? Marie, you want to take this one?
I would tell them to do it just because you are able to get experience in writing and socializing and so many different things, because there's so much that goes into making the exhibit. And I would also say that it's once a week for 2 hours, so it's not really a huge time commitment, and it gives you something to do, and you get to meet new people, and you learn a lot about the museum, and you learn more about what you don't see from just coming to visit.
Great. So how have the discussions and experiences of the program changed you as a person? I mean, that's a pretty big question and an expectation of the program. So, but how did participation change you as a person, or even your thoughts about what kind of work you want to do in the future? We don't expect every participant in our program to work in a museum, but hopefully it helps you think a little bit about your future. Deepti, you want to take this one?
After 4 very memorable years with this program, I can say that one big thing that I have learned and kind of taken from this program is to keep staying curious. And this applies to how each exhibition that this program has produced has had an individual unique story, and the junior curators are responsible for how they construct the story and express it to the audience and to the world. And in each story, I feel like I have personally taken in some sort of a different perspective that I can add on to my own background and express beyond just this program, beyond this museum, into my own life. And the same curiosity allows me to to feel gratitude for the humility and respect that curators have to put in for the exhibitions that they take part in and the objects that we deal with on a daily basis. So I don't know, I would just say to keep staying curious, keep asking questions, because there's no final answer to most things, and that curiosity is what has made the world what it is right now.
Awesome, thank you. Damien, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Honestly, this program has really brought me out of my shell socially. I've always been interested in glass because, well, my grandfather was a glass blower, but this program has allowed me to see all the possible jobs I could have at the museum, but I think I still want to be a glass blower.
Well, I think we've got you covered in terms of learning that trade, so we'd love to have you be a glass blower here. And in fact, you're not alone. It sounds to me like, Jess, you're also going to explore glass blowing in your program this coming year. Awesome. I think we've got a lot of people around here who are happy to hear that. Well, you all did a fabulous job. We were all so proud of you and all of your contributions. So whatever you take from this in the future, we wish you a lot of good luck with it, but we sure do appreciate your time and your work with us this year. So thank you very much. I want to just offer them a round of applause for their work. So far, I've been doing all of the question asking. Do you want to take over, or do you want to? But if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask as well. Julie's monitoring this is a hybrid program, so we have visitors. I think we had 70 people registered watching online. So there may be some questions coming through the chat. But if you have questions, there's a couple of, there's one mic right here if you want to come up and ask. Now's the time. Put your kids on the spot. We can also perhaps run a mic back to people. I'll put this one here. Does anybody have any questions? All right, no questions online? All right, then we'll go ahead and call it a night. Do you want to close this out?
Yep. Oh, never mind, one question now.
Someone is asking, what was the most challenging aspect of this program for you? Who wants to answer?
Oh, definitely social interaction.
Thank you.
Anybody
You did
else?
a great job, though, Damien.
I think one really hard thing, at least for me, is that there's so many objects, and it's been touched on this before for someone, but there's so many categories that one object can go in, and it was really hard to decide like what objects we should put, because there were so many objects that we wanted to display, but there wasn't enough room in the case. So I think narrowing down the objects was really challenging.
Yeah, these simple objects have so many stories attached to them. Figuring out which one you want to highlight is a challenge. Anybody else? I actually love this question. Oh, Nishal has his hand up.
I would say that the hardest part is thinking of like what's best for the people who are going to the exhibit and what they want to see. What would look best to them? How we format the entire exhibit.
Right. Yeah, that, believe it or not, that's a struggle that we all have as people who work with these collections every day. We're constantly having to remind ourselves that we're not the visitor, that the people coming into our doors may not be glass enthusiasts yet or ever. So how do we best tell this story in a way that will grab people who may not have a big connection to glass? So that is a very profound statement, and it's one that after 30 years of working in museums, I'm still having to remind myself I am not the visitor. Yeah, somebody else wanted to go as well.
I think the hardest part, for me at least, was writing. It was a lot of writing. I had no idea it was going to be that much writing. and it's also really hard to like write about glass and make it interesting almost, and like try to get visitors to actually read the whole thing and not like stop halfway through. But yeah, it was just a lot of writing. I was not expecting that much.
Well, and you're not doing it by yourself either, are you? Yeah, so we write as a group. They oftentimes will start by themselves writing a draft, and then we workshop them together and then rewrite. And as we have said many times during this spring, writing is rewriting. And oftentimes we had kind of communicated to them that writing in the world of entertainment and even like screenwriting, all of that happens also in a group setting. There's writers' rooms, so you're ahead of the game there. Is anybody else interested in answering this question?
Yeah, I think with joining virtually, there's always going to be some like tech issues, but I think Mika did an amazing job with your phone going around at each and every thing, and I felt very immersed as well as part of the team, so I'm very grateful.
It's amazing how heavy a phone can get in 30, 40 minutes. Yes, Mika did an amazing job. Another question? Go ahead.
It's a two-part question. So how did you learn of the program? And secondly, how could your school district help ensure students know of this amazing opportunity? So maybe this is the second part is more
Maybe
for our
Mika.
education department.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how did you learn of the program?
I was in another program before this one called Teen Leadership Council, and I heard from it from Mika, who also helps run that program. And I decided to join because I also had a few friends that were in it the year before, and they highly recommended it. And I do know that our school does send out some emails about this program and a few other ones at the CMOG to help get kids to figure out that there's something to do here and some things that you can get involved in your community. So I've definitely seen those emails to help people realize that this program is out there.
Yeah, I suspect some people are probably wondering how somebody from Queens ends up hearing about the program, and maybe somebody, and there are two students who are in North Carolina. Jess, you want to start?
It was funny, like a Google search at like 3 a.m. So basically I work at the Guggenheim Museum in Manhattan, and I wanted to immerse myself in more curatorial jobs. And I was up late one night and I just was searching up museum programs, and I gratefully found it.
Yes,
so,
we're
yeah.
grateful for Google too. Deepti and Nishal, Deepti has a history with us, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I used to live in Corning, so I spent my first 2 years in person, and it was amazing. And then, I moved to North Carolina, and I was actually worried that I wouldn't be able to continue the program because, virtual did exist, but in terms of being virtual every day, because, I can't commute from North Carolina. And then when Mika was like, yes, you can, and, I saw it last year and it worked out. It was definitely an odd experience for me just because I had experienced all the great things of in-person, and then when I went virtual, I kind of missed it, and there was a lack of the hands-on approaches and everything. But I'm just happy that I was able to be included in everything, and I'm really happy for Mika for doing everything that she did to keep the virtual participants included, because I feel like we all were included in some shape or form. But yeah.
Awesome. Nishal, how do we luck into getting you to come on board?
I was introduced to this by my older sister.
Yeah.
She told me about the program and she told me how interesting it was. And I wanted to try it out for the first time and see if I liked it. And so far it's been great. Even though I'm online, I'm still enjoying the experience, like formatting the entire exhibit, understanding what goes on here. It's really fun.
So, word of mouth is huge. I think if you talk to our marketing and communications people, they will tell you that word of mouth is actually one of the #1 ways that people hear about our museum and learn about it. So we appreciate you spreading the word and getting more voices in here. Mika, do you want to take the other part of this question? Which I believe was, how do we get people to know about this?
Yeah, and I think this will kind of be our last question. I usually send out emails. We send out emails through our marketing department, and we do have some contacts at the schools who forward things around for us kindly. this is one case where I maybe don't want a huge
Right.
spread of knowledge of this, because we have 14 students this year and we've sort of set an internal max at 15. And as you've heard from them, like even working with 14 is kind of challenging in some of the ways, especially working as a group to narrow down objects, to write the labels and everything. So at this point, with the capacity we have, we're kind of limited to how many students we can accept into the program and have it be a good experience for everyone. So,
Yeah.
but we love the support, and would love, if people are interested, I'd love to email them and let them know about it. So
Yeah, we're really fortunate that all the people who end up in the program, because it always feels like I'm sort of the match that's supposed to happen. So I'll leave it to you.
thank you so much, everybody. Those were really great questions, and it's 7:01 and I need to close us out. So I'm going to go ahead to our special thanks slide. We have the following individuals. I would love to add special thanks to them who designated their 2025 ENEON contributions in support of education programs at the museum, and this is one of those programs that those funds support. So we are really, really grateful to all of our supporters for that. We have a couple really fun events connected by glass coming up in September and October. So the Rubin Observatory in September and Preston Singletary in October. So please mark your calendars, stay tuned for more information. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And then last but not least, I want to thank all of our junior curators for their hard work on this fantastic exhibition. Thank you to the families for your support, and thank you to everyone involved in this program. As we've said, it touches so many departments around this museum, and so many people are involved in bringing it to life, and we couldn't do it without them. So I would like to welcome those of you who are on site to go back upstairs and we can see the exhibition. I welcome those of you who are online to please join us here at the museum sometime or online for other programs. So thank you all again, and have a lovely evening.